It's time now for Health Fitness Broadcast with Sherry, a show covering the hottest fitness topics and latest health issues. And now, here's your host, Sherry Horner.
Welcome to the show. Today's guest joins us from Maryland. He is a licensed physical therapist. He is a certified strength and conditioning specialist and the owner of Pinnacle Training and Consulting Systems. Our guest today is Chris Gellert. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Sherry.
So you have been in the industry for a few years now, in the fitness industry?
About approximately 14 years working as a trainer and 10 years as a physical therapist.
Okay, so not only are you in that industry, but I think it's really great that your wife is a massage therapist.
Correct, exactly.
So that's good. You guys make a good team. And today we're going to talk about strength and conditioning, and I have some other questions about physical therapy. So if I could just start off and ask you what, Chris, inspired you to get into physical therapy?
Sure. It was a long story, which I'll make short. I initially went to school for business and fell in love with marketing, advertising, after some soul searching like most college students do. And after completing my internship and graduating, I started to work at an advertising firm, a small firm, and gained experience like any new graduate and started to enjoy it. Unfortunately, I was let go because our client went Chapter 11, so I had to get a new position. At that time, I found a new position, and in about 5 or 6 months within that position, I hurt my back. And I thought that I hurt my back due to just lifting something at the gym or over-exercising. I had no medical training, no medical knowledge, just kind of a basic how to get in shape through reading magazines and friends. So I went to my doctor, saw a therapist, or after the doctor saw my back, said, you have an injured L405. And I meant, what is that? And long story short, that was an injured ligament. And I didn't know what that meant. He recommended physical therapy. And the therapy was okay at the time, but really didn't help initially. The second therapist I went to really made a difference. Mm-hmm. He was very hands-on. He explained things. He got models out, the spine, pictures. And with that explanation and visualization and just talking to me more about my back, I became very enthralled with the field and decided, wow, this is interesting. So as a result, that influenced me to make a career change. And I decided at that time to look into the field of physical therapy. I researched hundreds of hours, took time to talk to therapists, look at the field, the requirements, and decided to dive right in. And in doing so, I worked as an aide, physical therapy aide at a facility. I volunteered. I became a personal trainer to work with people to get knowledge about the body. Did what it took and went back to school at a community college while working and doing all these things simultaneously. So it was a very hectic time in my life. After that, I worked 2 years doing all these things, taking these classes, all the prerequisites, and applied in 1997 and got in. And 1997 began really my new career. I graduated in 1999 with a master's degree after doing my clinical rotation in Chicago, and came out really having a passion, not to help people, but really in orthopedics. Mm-hmm. And kind of beginning of how my life started, and then I, of course, got a position and started working, but that's the background of how things happened and where I am today.
Yeah, don't you feel like how things evolve that you end up exactly where you're supposed to be and you know it? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I believe a phrase that I learned from and your listeners, we probably can relate to this. Things happen for a reason is a strong statement, and I really, truly believe in that. And I think hurting my back, unfortunately, was a sign that this is what I meant to do. And I feel I was given a second chance to find that sometimes people take it longer in life. Some people find it immediately in life. But kind of like exercising or the industry of personal training. There's never a dull moment. There's always, for medicine, a new day or a different day, and new challenges. Mm-hmm. And never can we stop learning. And I feel very lucky to have gotten into it, and I'm still learning. So it's a great profession to help people.
Well, aside, you mentioned the personal training. So aside from the physical therapy, why did you become a personal trainer?
Well, the reason why I became a trainer is two reasons. One, I needed to create on my resume, because at the time in 1997, it was so competitive to get in, which it still is fairly, but has gotten a little less competitive. I needed an edge. I needed a niche. And I knew that my background was different, and I did well in my courses, but I wanted something to stand out. And I thought that might be something that would stand out when they looked at me for an interview. It wasn't a big piece, or playing rugby wasn't a big piece, but it was definitely different. And the interview, of course, went well, but it really was based on, I think, a whole package. And I think that was a big thing that made me realize this will help me. I also knew that working with people, getting an experience, showing them learn exercises, exercise prescription, program design, how to do a proper assessment would be a good precursor to the field of physical therapy. So that's why I did it. And 14 years later, still doing it, but not as much, obviously.
So over the years, as a personal trainer, what do you think the changes have you seen within the profession? You know, I've talked before with group fitness instructors and how that evolved from years ago, just having dance aerobic high impact classes to all of the variation of group fitness classes available today. What about the personal training profession? Have you seen a lot of changes in that over the years?
Yes, I have, and I just wrote an article on this, and I spoke to the audience in ECA Boston not too long ago recently. In the 80s, from my research and just getting started, I mean, not my getting started, but looking at what was the trend, it was very big on functional strengthening. And one of the pioneers with that was Juan Carlos Santana, very educated professional trainer and very educated in Florida. And I think from there, from functional strengthening, because everything was about function then, into the early 90s. And now from the 90s to the late 90s, everything was about, well, taking function, now doing corrective exercise and making changes and looking at how we can change and correct things to make exercise practical, from not only from assessment, but from prescription point of view. And now I see a resurgence back in like the 70s, which I was only a young boy, of kettlebell training. And kettlebell training being used in a multitude of settings, obviously from my background with the CSCS and just having used it before, kettlebell training is primarily for power enhancement, but can be used in a multitude of settings as well, general strengthening for all ages, but mostly for the power lifter. I think that the changes that have occurred are both good and bad. The good things are that we all change. We have to adapt to those changes. The unfortunate thing is, I believe, still, and as one of the few in the country, next to my colleagues like Gary Gray, Ray Cook, Tom Purvis, those who are also physical therapists, is the field is not regulated. And there's a lot of personal trainers I've worked with in California that are extremely bright, as well as in Chicago. And then the East Coast, there's a variance of backgrounds from online degrees to master degrees. So there's not a very set standard. And I think that is one disadvantage of the profession. There's been a lot of discussion about it lately. That's in the latest news. And most importantly, there's been a lot of argument. Who should regulate it? Why should it be regulated? And my only comment to that is, if I'm regulated as a physical therapist, say as attorneys, as dentists, as occupational therapists, why shouldn't personal trainers? And I think it would give them more respect. Mm-hmm. Is one as well. I believe that it would also give them more creed and more financial compensation for their knowledge.
Mm-hmm. And I agree.
In making these different tiers of knowledge or training levels. But that's, again, talking to other therapists, other people in the profession. That's just not me, my opinion. That's talking to other colleagues. So that's the debate right now that I've seen, I've read, I keep up with, and we'll see where it goes. But those are my thoughts on the changes and where we are and hopefully where we're going in the future.
Okay. I have some questions later I want to ask you about all of your programs and your courses, but I want to ask you, you mentioned rugby. So you played rugby in college?
I did. I did it for just 1 year, and it was really, I think, just to test out something different because I was a little physical in college or high school, but never did a lot. But at that time, I was trying to also meet new people and friends, and I went to a very social college, and it was one of the things that kind of fell in my lap. It was very good experience, but with rugby, rugby is obviously intense and challenging, but very dangerous, and you can get very injured easily because there's not much padding involved. Also, at the club level, there's a lot of drinking involved, and that's unfortunately can affect your grades, and it affected mine. And I was at the time dating a young woman who was in a sorority. So it just, both of those things kind of clashed, and my grades plummeted, and I needed to make a decision to continue to do that or to get out and make my grades, raise my grades, and graduate at an acceptable level or with a decent degree, a decreasing level of grade point average and degree, and that's what I did. So I left after a year of doing it to pursue working at the newspaper, getting as an advertising manager or associate, working in the newspaper, learning skills and sales and marketing, doing that. That was very beneficial, and it really ended well in graduating with a lot of experience versus just the rugby. So that's why I did that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good plan. But soon you will be going abroad to Australia, right? And you'll have something to do with the rugby team there?
Yes. A part of the curriculum that I'm pursuing, or I'm pursuing advanced training, every physical therapist nowadays can pursue a master's degree or a doctorate or a DPT, and there's other doctorates like a PhD, which is research and other forms of doctorate. The bachelors are phased out. And some therapists go for advanced training, which is called a residency, which is similar to a doctor, and that could be a year or two in length and duration. And Australia is one of the most respected, for my homework, places in the world that produce very educated therapists. Not that American therapists are not intelligent, as we, I think, are, and it's very intensive, our training, but those that I've met are brilliant. And over in Australia, they perceive them as the primary gatekeepers. They order tests, they get medication, they really know a lot more than we do, especially with team. And that was my influence of going there. So part of the training is going to be working with the rugby team, which I think will be a very fun, insightful, incredible learning experience to take that knowledge from as a student or as when I played in club level, and now as a mature professional therapist, now looking at them at that level professionally over there and to learn from them and a little bit about attitudes and cultural beliefs and how to treat a different way in their program. So I think it'll be a great learning experience. It's part of the curriculum.
Yeah, I think it sounds pretty exciting too. So what, when it comes to your profession, physical therapist, personal trainer, tell me, Chris, what are you most passionate about? Because you sound passionate about everything that you've mentioned so far, but what is that one thing that is number one?
The main thing that I would say, the number one I'm passionate about, is helping people. I think I was given a second chance, or getting into the profession was very challenging, and those physical therapists at work, I think all the ones I've worked with in my career, every one of them wants to help someone. I think there's different levels of helping people, just as a fitness professional does, but it's a different level in the sense of you're really impacting their lives from a movement perspective, or something they couldn't do because of pain or injury or surgery, and now they can do it because of your skills and your mindset. But differently than a personal trainer, personal trainers can also influence a person's life with weight loss, with just getting in shape, with working for an event or training for a race or marathon. So there's similarities, but I think the main difference is that I have got from it is that to really help someone be able to reach overhead, or in my last year, I've had 3 women not have to go surgery for their shoulder because of my therapy and my skills.
Great.
And it's not because of my being special. It's because of knowing science and reading and going back to school and staying on top of the literature and really showing a depth of knowledge and caring. And I think most importantly, just wanting to continue to learn. And it's a great feeling to help people, and that's probably my main answer. Mm-hmm. And the other part of that is I'm a sponge. I love to learn. I think that continues for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Always a thing to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. We are all that way. We want to take it all in and then use our knowledge to share with others and educate and inspire others also. So what about your patients that you treat? What type of patients do you work with?
Sure. Presently, I treat primarily orthopedic, those who have injury to their joints or muscles or ligaments. They can be either from falls or sprains or old chronic injuries, or even degeneration like arthritis. They can also, I've seen a lot of motor vehicle accidents, people in car accidents, people who had surgery, post-operative, knee replacements, ACLs, rotator cuff, fusions, ankle injuries, a lot of peripheral, we call peripheral, meaning away from the body, and most importantly, elderly, geriatrics. I've had patients with burns and wounds, young children as of 6 years of age, just issues with fractures, couldn't walk correctly, and some occasional neurologic patients, post-polio or neuro, stroke, issues with MS, multiple sclerosis, those with issues with fatigue. So a very myriad of conditions. Mostly I would say I treat as spinal conditions, both acute or chronic, with a neck, back, disc injuries, hurting their tailbone, the SI joint, which is where the tailbone meets the hip. Mm-hmm. That's primarily what I see on a daily basis, and it's like every day's a new day. Very, very different, diverse.
Yeah, I would say so. That's a lot, and I know that you guys have got to be busy because from open to close, you are treating patients, and a lot going on there. Can we talk now about your the Pinnacle Consulting training and consulting systems? And you educate. You're a trainer to the trainers, so to speak, educator, and you offer courses in continuing education for trainers. I want to talk about your book that you wrote, Synergy of Human Movement. Tell us about that.
It's a book that is a compilation of basically, it's been revised 3 times. It always seems like it's in work, but basically the book, the idea I had was I looked at being passionate about helping people, educating, and seeing a lot of the variance in education levels of trainers. I felt, one of the things I can do, because I'm both, is to write something that's scientifically based. So I took physical therapy knowledge and took that and put functional information together. So really wanted to go in and look at how does the human body work? How does the human body move from the inside out scientifically and synergistically? Biomechanically, how do we move in our joints and our muscles and everything that works, tendons, connective tissue? And then with the injuries to our body, what happens with an ACL injury? What happens with a person who has a blood clot or heart issue, COPD, or has scleroderma or fibromyalgia? And then based on the research, how to train those clients who come out of therapy and they want to go to the gym. And the other part of it is looking at periodization training, which is really taking a program and looking at it from a macrocycle, which is a year long, to a mesocycle, which is a month, to a microcycle. So that's based on Tudor-Bampa and NSA's principles, and most importantly, using that with every client to be able to design programs that get results safely. And then the other portion of that is integrative training, which is really looking at stretching, stabilization training, core strengthening, neuromuscular education training, and why and how each of those disciplines affects each one and should be used with each client on a regular basis. And I think it's done well, and I'm working on a second course called Human Movement Integration, which is an evolution of that course, so it's going to be a second course. And that's going to be my last one, but the course then was made into a live seminar so that people could do it and learn hands-on and lecture. So there's a version of just doing it at home study.
And the DVD comes with that? Is
Correct.
That the DVD you're talking about?
Correct. The DVD is my 2 days of lecturing live in front of an audience. That's correct.
Okay, that's great. I look forward to seeing that. I haven't seen that one yet, so you can send that to me, Chris, so I can check it out.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so the live seminars, you do those at fitness conventions?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, and you're associated with several different fitness education conventions, so to speak. So you've done a lot with let's see, you're national fitness presenter for IDEA Club Industry. There's a whole lot more. NSCA
Yeah.
National Conference, and what are some of the other ones? CanFit Pro.
No, I have done CanFit Pro ECA recently.
Okay.
Did you say Club Industry? Club Industry, URSA, PSI, Pound Sports International, and you mentioned NSCA and IDEA. Those are the primary ones, and I'm going to be speaking in the future, hopefully for CanFit Pro, and hopefully doing some more with IDEA when I come back from Australia, and possibly with another company in Canada. So I'm looking to definitely broaden my teaching abilities or teaching skills, not only in the States, but also across the country. And possibly in Australia while I'm in school. I hope to do that as well. That'd be a great experience if I could do that.
Yeah, that's exciting. I can't wait to talk to you when you're in Australia, because I want to know a little more about the fitness industry there, because it's really increased a lot. People are more interested. There's more trainers now there than probably ever. So I want to speak with you when you're in Australia about that. So
exactly.
Back to your training systems. What would you suggest for personal trainers listening? They've been a personal trainer for a few years, and they need some continuing education credits. So what would you suggest? They start with the level 1?
I would. I think that anytime you have a background or basic exercise science, that you continue learning the basics, and then once you have the basics, is go there for the advanced to level 1. I think there's a lot out there that are good certifications, but to get a good base, just like I have a base as a therapist, and that's why this next level is another base, or it's kind of layering effect, kind of like a cake or a pie. I would recommend the level 1, and it really goes deeper. It goes deeper into the anatomy. I think it's something that never changes. Anatomy is something important to understand. The functional anatomy of how muscles move, biomechanics of what happens in the joint and muscles, and understanding injuries. I think understanding someone's injury, what's going on, is crucial to developing the program, and really understanding exercise prescription and that periodization training we mentioned. So that'd be my advice, definitely.
Yeah, and if they've already taken level 2, level 1, level 2 is coming?
Level 2 will be coming. It'll probably be done by the end of next year. It's basically going to be 12 sections. Level 1 is 6 sections. Level 2 will have example, training the obese client, which is, we're an industry of a lot of obesity in children and adults. There's going to be a section on geriatrics, training the geriatric client. There's going to be a section of understanding gait, which is when the foot hits the ground, how everything changes, how when someone has a foot that is either pronated or decreases their arch, how it affects their knee and their hip joint, or supination. There's going to be a section on training outside the lever box, which is training in not only the frontal and sagittal plane in transverse plane, what I call the Z plane. Understanding the weak links in our movement chain. Every part in our body has a weak link. There's a weak link in our neck. There's a weak link in our lower back. There's a weak link in our hips, our knee, our ankle, based on science and research articles that I studied and I found. So I think the next course is really going to be a complement to the first one, and just enhance it and be that much better. I'm also going to include a big portion on pain, talk about pain, the biochemistry of pain, make it real simple so people understand it. And I think that it will round things out pretty well.
Yeah, that's a pretty good course for trainers to take for continuing education.
Exactly.
That sounds great. We're getting close to the end of our show, and I was wondering if you could share a couple tips with our listeners, and maybe even tips for trainers.
Sure. I think based on anyone's experience, whether it be working as a new personal trainer or they've been for years, is the most important thing is knowledge. I think that's my biggest thing of advice. That's why I'm pursuing more training, because you'll never know everything. And I think with knowledge comes confidence, and confidence comes a way to strengthen a relationship with a client. I've been very blessed to work in 14 years with clients. I had a client for 3 years. I had a client for another one for 4 years. And I think now with the economy being from in a recession standpoint and turning around, that people are being more frugal with training, and they're they're maybe doing more the group training, which is more cost effective for them. But having that knowledge and additional will make the personal trainer and the professional more competent and stronger. So that will help you, the purse trainer, with, again, the assessment, the prescription, really helping a client reach their goals. I think number two, going to conferences is vital. You need to continue up with conference information, whether it be IDEA, IRSA, Club Industry, ECA, the main nationals out there. I think there's a lot of good information. Seeing myself, someone who has unique background both as a therapist, trainer, speak is really a benefit because you can hear the difference and see it, but also to be able to talk to me afterwards. And there's other very good presenters out there too. And thirdly, I think, is practice what you preach. Use that on your own, the trainers use it on their own bodies and with their family. And most importantly, reading journals, keeping up with clinical information, because the science is always changing, but the underlying anatomy and functional anatomy and biomechanics is always the same. So clinical research is really important, and staying up with that research, because our field is all about evidence-based research. And I think that's the thing I would say, is keep up with research in the health industry in general, and those things will make, I think, anyone better and more confident and more skilled and more marketable.
Really good tips there, Chris. Thanks. And now, can you give a tip to our listeners that are not in the profession of personal training? Anything along the lines? So I want to mention that I know several people that needed physical therapy, and their copay was so high that they didn't continue with the physical therapy because it would run into a few $100s a week. So they opted to just do their own, what they had learned, continue doing that at home. And from myself being a patient in physical therapy, and even though I stretch, I teach stretching, and I knew that I could do the things I learned at home, but they actually pushed me a little further than I was willing to push myself. And so what do you suggest for those people who think, well, I can just avoid that payment and skip the rest of my PT sessions? What do you think?
My response to that point is that I still would, even with the copay issue, is at least to be seen by a therapist for at least a visit or two to get a full assessment, because therapists really know the body well. And I think, as you know, and your listeners know, listening now, a doctor spends on the average of 4.5 minutes as soon as they walk in the door and they leave. That's actually according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We as therapists spend 30 to 45 minutes minimum, or at least 45 to an hour the first visit. And each visit thereafter is 30 to 40 minutes. So I think getting a very thorough assessment, understanding what's wrong and how they can help you. And if there's a copay issue, making sure that the therapist teaches them the exercise or what to do at home based on science and research would be a great way to go. And using them as a resource by phone, by email, correspondence is a way of keeping the financial demands low, but getting progress and up and reaching those goals high. That would be my advice.
Thanks for joining us. It's time for us to go. As we say goodbye, I'd like to remind you to take some time to relax, to reflect back on the success of your day. Enjoy that good, positive feeling of knowing you're doing everything you can to take care of your health.